Tonight, I wanted to tell you about a woman who once said no to protect a heart. And the rainy night, years later, when that no finally became a yes.
The rain came down in sheets against the windshield, turning the winding country road into a smear of green and gray. I hadn't seen another car for 40 minutes. The GPS had given up somewhere past the last village, leaving me with a handwritten set of directions I'd received in a cream-colored envelope 3 weeks ago. Come to Blackthorn. We have much to discuss. No signature, just the address, the dates, and a single line in handwriting I'd spent years trying to forget. I almost didn't come, stood in my apartment with the invitation in my hand, and felt 21 again, standing outside her office door with a letter I should never have written. But I wasn't 21 anymore. I was 28, with 2 published collections and a novel that had done well enough to earn me a seat at tables like this. I had earned my place. Whatever else waited behind those iron gates, I refused to let an old wound dictate my career. The villa emerged from the rain like something from a fever dream. Blackthorn, 3 stories of pale stone and dark shutters, wisteria climbing the east wing in a tangle of wet branches. The gravel drive crunched under my tires. Other cars were already parked in neat rows. A black Audi, a silver Volvo, someone's impractical vintage Jaguar. I killed the engine and sat there. Rain hammered the roof. The villa's front door was oak, massive, iron-hinged. Warm light spilled from the windows on the ground floor. I could see figures moving inside, shadows passing behind curtains. My hands were steady when I grabbed my bag. They stayed steady when I splashed through the puddles to the covered entrance. But when I reached for the brass knocker, my fingers hesitated half an inch from the metal. She might not even be here. The thought came unbidden, useless. I knew she would be. The invitation hadn't named the curator, but I'd checked. Of course I'd checked. Blackthorn's literary retreats were run by a small committee of editors and writers, and Margot Ellison had been the creative director for the past 3 years. Margot. Even the name felt like pressing on a bruise. The door opened before I could knock. A young man in a soft gray sweater smiled at me. "You must be one of the writers. Come in, come in. The weather's gone biblical out there." I stepped into the foyer, and the warmth hit me like a physical thing. Wood-paneled walls, a staircase curving upward into shadow, a chandelier dripping crystals, and the smell, old books, beeswax, damp wool, something floral I couldn't place. "I'm Julian," the young man said, taking my coat. "I handle logistics. The welcome session starts in an hour, but there's tea in the library, wine in the drawing room, and your room is ready whenever you want to escape." I thanked him and took the key he offered. Number 7, 2nd floor. I didn't go upstairs. I stood in the foyer, listening to the villa breathe around me. Distant voices, the clink of glasses, a woman's laugh, bright and unguarded. And somewhere, from deeper in the house, the sound of a door opening and closing with quiet precision. My feet carried me toward the drawing room. I told myself I needed to see the other guests, establish myself, network, the professional thing to do. The drawing room was long and narrow, with tall windows facing the rear gardens, not that you could see anything through the downpour. A fire crackled in the hearth. 6 or 7 people were scattered across velvet sofas and wingback chairs, holding wine glasses, making the careful conversation of strangers who know they'll be spending 2 weeks together. I scanned the room. My pulse was a steady thrum in my throat. And then, "The rain is supposed to continue through the week. I suggest we all embrace the gloom." The voice came from behind me, low, measured, familiar in a way that made my stomach drop and my spine go rigid all at once. I turned. Margot Ellison stood in the doorway to the hall, a leather portfolio tucked under one arm, her dark hair pulled back in a low twist. She wore a charcoal blouse, simple, elegant, the sleeves rolled just above her wrists, silver at her temples that hadn't been there 7 years ago, the same sharp jaw, the same gray eyes that always seemed to see too much. She was addressing the room, her gaze sweeping across the guests with the practiced warmth of someone who had done this many times before. "Welcome to Blackthorn," she said. "I'm Margot Ellison, the curator for this session. Over the next 2 weeks, we'll be workshopping manuscripts, discussing craft, and hopefully finding some moments of silence in which to remember why we do this work at all." She smiled. It was a good smile, controlled, professional. Then her eyes found me. The pause was almost imperceptible. A half-beat, a flicker. Her smile didn't falter, but something behind it shifted, tightened. Her fingers curled a fraction tighter around the portfolio. The welcome dinner was served in a cavernous dining room with a table that could seat 20 and currently held 9. Candles dripped wax onto iron holders. The food was excellent: braised lamb, roasted root vegetables, a wine reduction that tasted like it had been simmering since dawn. I ate mechanically, made conversation with the man at my elbow, a poet from Dublin who seemed more interested in the wine list than the company. Margot sat at the head of the table. She didn't look at me, not directly, but I felt her attention like a hand at the small of my back, a phantom pressure I knew was imaginary and couldn't shake. After the plates were cleared, the silver-haired man, a novelist named Gerard, I'd learned, suggested brandy in the library. Most of the group filtered out of the dining room in a loose cluster of laughter and wine-warm camaraderie. I lingered, pretended to study a painting on the wall, a landscape, hills I didn't recognize. "You came." Her voice was quiet, close. I didn't turn. I was invited. "Yes, I know." Now I turned. Margot stood 3 feet away, her portfolio gone, her hands empty at her sides. In the candlelight, the silver at her temples looked like threads of mercury woven through dark silk. She was still beautiful. Of course she was. That was never the problem. "It's been a long time," I said. 7 years. "You kept count?" A muscle moved in her jaw. "I kept track of your career, the collections, the novel. You've done well. I had a good teacher." The words landed between us like a stone dropped into still water. Margot's eyes flickered. For a moment, just a moment, the composed mask slipped. I saw something underneath, something raw. Then it was gone. "The retreat is structured around intensive critique," she said, her voice returning to its professional register. "You'll be assigned to my workshop group. I trust that won't be a problem." It wasn't a question. Should it be? She held my gaze. "No, it shouldn't. We're both adults, professionals. Whatever history exists between us is precisely that, history." "Of course," I said. "History." I walked past her toward the library. My shoulder nearly brushed hers. Nearly. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my narrow bed under a duvet that smelled like lavender and old wood, listening to the rain and the creak of the villa settling around me. My mind kept circling back to the same memory, the same moment I'd tried for years to bury. 21 years old, a spring afternoon, the letter in my hands, folded and refolded until the creases were soft as fabric. Margot's office at the university, books stacked on every surface, a mug of cold tea on the windowsill. I had handed her the letter, watched her read it, watched her face change. She had been gentle. That was the worst part. If she had been cruel, I could have hated her. But she had placed the letter on her desk with careful, deliberate hands. She had said my name softly. She had told me, in her measured way, that I was brilliant and young, and standing at the threshold of a life that deserved to be lived fully. That she was my mentor, my teacher, and it would be a violation of that trust to accept what I was offering. I'm saying no because it's the right thing to do, not because I don't feel it. I hadn't believed the last part, not then. I had walked out of her office with my face burning and my chest hollowed out, convinced I had been rejected by the only woman who had ever truly seen me. It took years to understand what she had actually said, what she had actually meant, but understanding did not make the memory stop hurting. The first workshop session was held in the library the next morning. Rain drummed against the tall windows. The room smelled of leather and paper and the faint citrus of someone's perfume. Margot sat in a wing-back chair near the fireplace, a stack of manuscripts on the table beside her. There were 5 of us in her group: me, a young poet named Iris, Gerard the novelist, a quiet academic named Celia, and a woman I hadn't noticed much the night before. Her name was Saskia. She was tall, with copper hair cropped close to her scalp and a mouth that seemed to default to a half-smile. She sat across from me, and when our eyes met, she smiled fully. "First time at one of these?" she murmured, leaning across the table. "First time at Blackthorn. Not my first retreat." "Good. You can show me the ropes." Her smile widened. "I'm completely out of my depth." She wasn't. I could tell from the confident way she held herself, the manuscript peeking from her bag, with its pages dog-eared and annotated. But the warmth was genuine, and I found myself smiling back. Somehow I doubt that. Saskia's eyes flicked to Margot, who was arranging her notes with precise movements. "She's intimidating, isn't she? The curator. I read her last novel 3 times. Feel like I should genuflect or something." "She's human," I said. "Flawed like the rest of us." The words came out sharper than I intended. Saskia raised an eyebrow, but didn't press. The workshop began. Margot guided the discussion with surgical precision, cutting to the heart of each manuscript with critiques that were incisive without being cruel. When it was my turn, I braced myself. "This chapter," Margot said, tapping a page of my manuscript, "is structurally sound but emotionally guarded. The narrator is holding something back. I suspect the writer is too." Her eyes met mine over the table. The room fell quiet. "You have a gift for language," she continued, "but language without vulnerability is just decoration. If you want this to resonate, you need to let the reader feel what the narrator is afraid to feel." I wanted to argue, wanted to defend the choices I'd made, but she was right. She had always been right. That was the infuriating, intoxicating thing about Margot Ellison. "I'll consider that," I said. Something flickered in her expression. Approval, maybe, or disappointment. I couldn't tell anymore. The days passed in a blur of workshops, meals, and rain. Saskia sought me out more and more often, sitting beside me at dinner, walking with me through the villa's long corridors, finding me in the library late at night when I couldn't sleep. She was easy to talk to, warm, uncomplicated, openly curious about me. On the 4th night, we shared a bottle of wine in the drawing room after the others had gone to bed. The fire had burned down to embers. "Can I ask you something personal?" Saskia said. "You can ask. Is there something between you and Margot Ellison?" The wine had loosened something in my chest, or maybe it was the rain, the endless, enveloping rain. "There was," I said, "a long time ago, or almost was. She was my mentor. I was young and stupid." She said no. Saskia absorbed this. "And now? Now she's the curator of a retreat I was invited to. Nothing more." Saskia's hand found mine on the arm of the sofa. Her fingers were warm. "She's an idiot." "She wasn't," I said. "That's the problem." Saskia leaned closer. Her breath smelled like wine and something sweet. "You know I've been flirting with you, right? Just want to make sure you've noticed." I laughed. It felt good. Clean. I noticed. And, before I could answer, a sound from the doorway made us both turn. Margot stood there, a book in her hand, her expression unreadable. She looked at Saskia, then at me, then at our hands, still intertwined on the arm of the sofa. "Forgive the interruption," she said.
Her voice was ice. "I was returning a volume to the library. I'll take the long way around." She was gone before I could say anything. Saskia let out a low whistle. "Well," she said, "that was illuminating."
The storm hit on the sixth night. The power flickered twice during dinner and gave out entirely just after 10, plunging the villa into darkness. Julian appeared with candles and apologies, guiding the guests to their rooms with small flashlights. I didn't go to my room. I went to the library. The library, where the fireplace still worked, where the tall windows showed lightning splitting the sky in jagged white lines. She was already there. Margot sat in the wingback chair, a single candle on the table beside her. The light carved her face into planes of shadow and gold. She looked up when I entered, didn't seem surprised. "You always did love storms," she said. "You remembered." "I remember everything." I crossed a room and sat in the chair across from her. The candle flickered. The rain lashed the glass. "Why did you invite me here?" I asked. "Because you deserve to be here. Your work merited it." "That's not what I'm asking." She was silent for a long moment. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the villa, a door slammed shut, caught in a draft. "I wanted to see you," she said finally. "I told myself it was professional, that I could see you and it would be simple, collegial. I was wrong. My heart was a fist in my chest. Why did you say no, back then? Really, not what you told me. The truth." Margot closed her eyes. When she opened them, the composure was gone, stripped away. What remained was a woman I had never seen before, tired, frightened, hopeful in a way that looked almost painful. "Because I wanted you," she said. "I wanted you so badly I couldn't trust myself. You were 21, brilliant and fragile, and standing at the beginning of everything. If I had said yes, I would have been taking something from you. Your autonomy, your future, your ability to become whoever you were meant to become without my shadow over you." Her voice cracked, barely, a hairline fracture. "I kept your letter. It's in a box in my study at home. I've read it 100 times. I've regretted my answer every day for 7 years. But I've never regretted protecting you." The candlelight blurred. I realized I was crying, silent tears tracking down my cheeks. "You broke my heart," I whispered. "I know." Her eyes shone. "I broke mine too." I moved without thinking, leaning toward her, saw her do the same. The space between us shrank to inches. Her breath was warm on my lips. I could smell her paper, cedar, the faint trace of bergamot. Her hand came up, pressed gently against my collarbone. "Not yet," she said. Her voice was unsteady. "The retreat isn't over. I'm still the curator. You're still a guest. If we do this, I need there to be no ambiguity, no power between us, no excuse anyone could make." I pulled back. "You're serious?" "I've waited 7 years," she said. "I can wait 3 more days." She cupped my face. Her thumb brushed the wetness from my cheek. "After the retreat ends, after the others leave, if you still want this, want me, then ask me again, and I will say yes." I closed my eyes, leaned into her touch. "Okay," I said. "Okay." If you want the private, uncut version of what happened after the retreat ended, the kiss, the room, the morning after, you'll find it on Patreon. The link is in the description. Now, let's return to Blackthorn. The last day of the retreat was a blur of goodbyes, handshakes, promises to stay in touch. Saskia hugged me on the front steps, her car waiting in the drive. "Whatever happens," she said, "I hope she deserves you." I smiled, but I didn't answer. The villa emptied slowly, one car after another crunching down the gravel drive until only mine remained. The rain had stopped, but everything still shone with it. The cobblestones, the ivy, the iron railings, the dark leaves trembling beneath the weight of water. Julian had left an hour ago. The staff were gone. Blackthorn felt different without voices in it. Larger, quieter,
like a house holding its breath. I found her in the greenhouse, a glass structure attached to the villa's east wing, filled with ferns and climbing roses and the soft drip of rainwater on panes of glass. The storm had passed. The sky was a pale, bruised grey. Margot stood with her back to me, her hands resting on a wooden potting table. She had changed out of her structured blouse into something softer, a cream sweater, hair loose around her shoulders. She turned when she heard my footsteps. For a second, neither of us spoke. All the polished words, all the careful boundaries, all the years we had used to survive what we wanted, they seemed to vanish in the damp air between us. "The retreat is over," I said. Her eyes held mine. "No more guests. No more curators. Just two women," I said, "who've been waiting 7 years." She smiled. A real smile. Unpolished, nervous. Just two women. I crossed the space between us, stopped when I was close enough to see the flecks of gold in her grey eyes. "Ask me," I said. Her breath caught. She reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. Her fingers lingered on my jaw. "May I kiss you?" "Yes." 7 years dissolved in the space between the word and her mouth. She kissed me the way rain soaks into dry earth, slowly, thoroughly, the kind of kiss that doesn't just touch the surface, but sinks deep into every parched, aching place you'd forgotten existed. Her lips were soft. Her hands slid into my hair. She made a sound against my mouth, something between a sigh and a sob, and I felt it everywhere I had ever waited for her. 7 years, she breathed against my lips. 7 years I've imagined this. Then stop imagining. She pulled back just enough to look at me. Really look. "Are you certain?" "I've never been more certain of anything." She took my hand, led me through the greenhouse, past the ferns and the roses, through a side door that opened onto a private study. Books lined every wall. A deep emerald chaise sat beneath a window where the rain had begun to fall again, softer now, a gentle percussion on the glass. A fire had been laid in the hearth, not yet lit. The room smelled of cedar, old paper, and the faint sweetness of flowers warmed by the day. Margot turned to face me. In the grey light, she looked younger, or maybe just less guarded. The lines around her eyes were not signs of age, but evidence of a life lived. A life that had brought her here, to this room, to this moment. "I want to take my time with you," she said. Her voice trembled on the last word. "Is that all right?" "Yes," I whispered. She stepped closer, not rushing, not taking, only asking. Her fingers brushed the collar of my blouse, then stopped there, as if even touching fabric required permission. I placed my hand over hers, guided it gently to my heart. "There," I said. "Start there." Her eyes filled, so did mine, and when she kissed me again, it was not the kiss of a fantasy, not the kiss of a memory. It was the kiss of two women who had finally arrived in the same room at the same time, with nothing left to hide behind. The rain softened against the window. The room disappeared, and what happened next belonged to the quiet, to the fire that had not yet been lit, to the books that kept our secret, to the kind of tenderness you do not explain while it is still warm on your skin.
By morning, the rain had stopped. I woke to pale light pressing through the curtains and the smell of tea. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. Then I heard her moving softly across the room. Margot, barefoot on the old wooden floor, wrapped in a cream cardigan, her hair loose and sleep-touched around her face. She carried 2 cups of tea with the concentration of someone performing a sacred task. When she saw I was awake, she stopped. The expression on her face was so open that it almost hurt to look at. No mask, no polished restraint, no curator, no professor, just Margot, the woman who had once said no, the woman who had waited, the woman who, finally, had stayed. "Good morning," she said. It was the simplest thing, 2 words, and somehow they undid me more completely than any confession. "Good morning," I answered. She came to sit beside me on the chaise, handing me a cup of tea. Our fingers brushed. Neither of us pulled away. Outside the window, The garden glistened beneath the washed-clean sky. Every leaf looked newly made. Every rose carried a trembling bead of water. For a while, we drank in silence. Not the painful kind, the safe kind. The kind that exists when two people no longer need to fill every space, because the truth is already sitting between them. "What happens now?" I asked. Margot looked down at her tea, then back at me. "Now," she said, "I make you breakfast. We talk about your next book. We take a walk in the garden if the path isn't flooded. And when we're ready, we tell whoever needs to know that we're together. Just like that? Just like that." She smiled faintly. "There's no rule against it. No ethical breach. You're not my student. You're not my guest. You're a woman I've loved for 7 years, and I'm done hiding." My chest tightened. "Margot." "I know," she said softly. "It's a lot." "No." I set the tea aside. "It's exactly enough." Her hand found mine under the edge of the blanket, careful at first, then certain. "I need you to know something," she said. "The first no was not rejection. I know that now. I hated that you didn't know it then. I hated you a little for it." She smiled, sad and tender. "You were allowed." "I know." I looked toward the window, at the pale morning, at the garden, at the villa that no longer felt like an ambush, but like the place where something wounded had finally been set down. "For years," I said, "I thought that no was the end of us." Margot's thumb moved slowly over my knuckles. "So did I." "And now?" She leaned closer, not enough to kiss me, just enough for the warmth of her to become part of the air I was breathing. "Now," she said, "we stop running." She didn't promise me forever, not that morning. She didn't make impossible vows or turn 7 years of silence into something neat and easy. She made me tea. She opened the curtains. She looked at me without hiding. And somehow, after 7 years of no, that felt more dangerous than any promise. Because it was not a fantasy anymore. It was not a letter folded too many times. It was not a memory I had misread in the dark. It was real. Her hand in mine. The garden after rain. The quiet certainty of a woman who had once protected me by leaving and had finally chosen me by staying. Outside, the clouds began to part. A thin line of sunlight touched the wet glass. Margot smiled. And for the first time in 7 years, I stopped waiting for the past to hurt me. I let the morning in.